Welcome to Let Them Play, a conversation with Angela Hanscom. Angela is a pediatric occupational therapist and founder of Timbernook. I'm Kara Zakavich, Child Injury Prevention Program Coordinator at the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute. One of the topics that we focused on recently is risky play. On the Prevention Institute website, we define risky play as thrilling, exciting play that includes the possibility of injury. This kind of play happens most often outdoors during children's free play. So Angela, how do you define or characterize risky play?
That is a really good question. So I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, as you've mentioned, and we actually don't talk about risky play that much. We don't define it necessarily in that terms. We call it really the just right challenge. Like we constantly want to challenge children's minds, bodies, and senses in order to really enhance and improve development. So, but in order to do that, they do need to move in ways that kind of make adults gasp. And so that's kind of, that's kind of the way we look at it, is really constantly challenging those systems. And so that's how I would define it, I guess. And it does look kind of scary to some people. But, for instance, being on a swing, we want them to stand on the swing. We want them to go on their bellies. We want them to spin and do all the things that might look risky to some adults, but those are the very things that will help with their development, if that makes sense.
Excellent. So I came across the quote on Facebook where you said, by not allowing children to take risks, we're actually creating a child that is more unsafe. And this certainly resonated with me. So could you talk a little bit more about the importance for healthy child development and what that quote means to you?
Oh, absolutely. So what I've been seeing for a number of years is that we've gotten to the point where we are really trying to keep children safe, and it's all good intentions, but we're starting to put more and more restrictions on what children can and can't do. And it could be out playing outside, or it could be on a playground, or it could be at recess time. And it's starting to impact their development in ways that we never expected. And I guess this, going back to the swing example, that's a very basic example of we're starting to put more restrictions around swings, for instance. So I want to give a practical example. One time I was treating a child in therapy, and I asked them to stand on the swing, and the child looked at me and said, "That's dangerous, Miss Angie." And I'm like, "Why is that dangerous?" So I told her, I said, "I want you to go at recess time, and I want you to start spinning on your swings, because spinning actually helps the child to know where their body is in space. And it actually helps them become safer in their environment because they know where they are." And so she did. She went to recess, and the next week she came back to therapy and said, "I'm not allowed to spin. They've made a rule at recess time that we can't spin anymore. It's too dangerous." So I asked a recess monitor, "Is this true? Are they not allowed to spin on swings?" And she said, "It is true. And they're not allowed to go on their bellies. They're not allowed to do anything but stay in this upright position." And as therapists, we always want to get them in that anti-gravity position. And we actually purposely position them in all different directions in order there's like little hair cells inside the inner ear, and we want them to move in rapid ways so the fluid can move back and forth in their inner ear. And that actually helps develop their balance sense. It's called the vestibular system. And if that sense is underdeveloped, if we're not allowing them to move in those vigorous ways, that system is going to be underdeveloped. And it actually affects everything. It affects what we call sensory integration, which is like organization of the brain, laying the foundation for learning. Affects body awareness. So one thing it does is it helps a child to walk from point A to point B without tripping and falling. It helps them to stay in their seat without falling on the ground at school. However, if we're not allowing them to move in those vigorous ways, that's a lot of children, that's becoming underdeveloped. And so we're seeing an increase in children literally doing that, running into other children more often. Teachers are reporting kids are falling out of the chairs at school, becoming more and more unsafe, getting hurt more often on the playground. So it's really ironic because we're actually preventing them from developing the skills that will make them safer in their environment.
That makes sense to me. And so we're seeing that obviously a lot more in school age children. Is
Yes.
there some other things that we're seeing in maybe preschool children or children before they get to preschool?
Yeah, it's happening at the preschool level as well. So when I started interviewing teachers for my book Balance and Barefoot, they were seeing it at a really young age. So 3 and 4 year olds were starting to fall out of their chair, run into each other more often. Um, Something to think about is that vestibular sense that I was talking about. It supports everything. It supports attention in the classroom. It supports, like I said, body awareness. It supports the eyes being able to work as a team to read and write, and also to bring down activity level. So like if a child's really hyper, to bring that down naturally. And when a baby is born, that vestibular sense is fully functioning if they're full term. It's not like vision where you only see black and white at first, and it takes time to really develop the visual sense. The vestibular system, they've researched it, and it's fully functioning when they're born. However, if you take that baby and you keep them upright all the time, and you don't allow them to crawl on the dirt, and they are like being put in a stroller, and then they're placed in a car seat, but they're constantly in this upright position, the same thing will happen. They are not getting that movement they need. And inside the inner ear, that fluid will thicken, and they start getting ear infections. They start not knowing where their body is in space. And then we're starting to see more problems with emotional regulation. Again, that more and more kids are becoming clumsy, having trouble with attention, behavioral issues, and all of it is interconnected. It's really neuroscience. The brain, yeah, everything's all connected. So once you restrict something so much, it can affect everything.
Excellent. So risky play or free play, outdoor play, often involves challenges. And so they learn about themselves, as you said, they learn how to move in the space, they learn about their abilities and the environments around them. So that would include risks and hazards, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So we want adults to be offering those opportunities for children to manage those hazards and not be put into danger, of course, but at the same time helping their development.
Right.
So how can anyone who is working with children and families, whether it be a teacher or whether it be a social worker or an educator of some sort, or even a parent themselves working with their own family, how can they promote and encourage this type of movement and play?
That's a great question. So really the first thing we do is we try here at our program at Timbernook, we try to use the environment to our advantage. And we create a yes environment outside. So we try to eliminate as many hazards as possible. And hazards are things that the kids don't see coming, right? So it's like a bee's nest under the ground where they can't regulate and determine what kind of risks they want to take. Or it could be glass on the ground. It could be, a broken swing, something like that. So we try to eliminate the hazards while allowing for risk, like you say. So, having the swing there, but allowing them to climb on top of the swing, allowing them to go on their belly, to go upside down. So I think the first thing we do is we try to look at the environment and say, well, what are the hazards? Is there poison ivy? Maybe we don't play over there, or we take the poison ivy out. So we want to try to create a yes environment as much as possible so the adults don't have to intervene so much. And then we keep it pretty simple, but we do a lot of loose part play. So we provide materials that will inspire play. For instance, it might be fort building supplies like planks for older kids, shears, curtains that are see-through are used a lot by children, baskets with nothing in them. that sort of thing, even gutters and balls, and just experimenting with different materials outside. And then if you can try to think of using your environment to your advantage. So if you have access to a stream or mud puddles, or if you can create mud that offers a different type of sensory experience and place different materials near that area, that can inspire different kinds of play as well. So even for little children, for instance, if you have a toddler and you have some mud, I might bring some stainless steel kitchen items out there, right, and place it right near the mud puddle so that the child associates those materials with the mud and they start experimenting and playing with that. And it actually allows the adult to step back a little bit. If the environment is inspiring play, the adult can actually be more of an observer role. And I guess also trying to keep yourself from talking so much. Sometimes, like, we want to point everything out to children. So when they start playing, really just taking more of the observational role and be there for safety. Make sure the child's safe, the environment's safe. But for the most part, allowing the child to take ownership over their play experience. There's not a lot of opportunities where children can direct their play anymore. And, to me, a very important occupation of children is outdoor play, but it needs to be the child's idea, and they need to have some ownership over that as well. So that's one idea. You could take that same mud puddle and you could put planks and trucks near the mud puddle to see what they do, and you're going to have a totally different play experience. If you have beaches, be creative with what materials you put out there. Maybe not just a pail and a shovel, but can you bring again that kitchenware? Can you bring the trucks and planks? So it inspires different kinds of play, so they get more and more creative with their play.
I love that phrase. Can you say that again about yes?
The yes environment?
Yes environment. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great phrase. And that's a really easy way, I think, for parents to think about it in particular. And I also loved what you said about being an observer or observation. Often we think about supervision, but maybe we can think of supervising from an observation perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And I guess the last question that I had for you was, what does being supportive of children engaging in risky play look like? So what do some of the parents or the program leaders, what does that look like in the Timber Nook setting, for example?
That's a really good question. I do. So for our providers, it's a little different than parents. For our providers, we create that yes environment and we reduce the hazards. But one thing that we've learned over the years is that if we are too close, I'm speaking a little bit older now, if the toddlers are different, you can't really hide on them because they'll like panic and it's not really safe. But when you get to age 4 and up, you can remove yourself a little bit. So we have learned over the years that if, let's say, kids were building a teepee or a fort, if we were standing right next to them, we learned that the children would turn to us to seek constant ideas, and we became the idea giver for them. Or they would tattle on each other more if the adult presence was really high, and they wouldn't solve their own problems. So they wouldn't practice those conflict resolution skills. But over the years, if we backed up and reduced adult presence out there, so we got down low, and so they're still being supervised, we can still see them for safety if we need to get in there. They would turn to each other to solve their own problems and start coming up with their own ideas. And I think that was really key, was really paying attention to your adult presence out there was big. And having mixed ages also really helps. So if true neighborhood play is children of all different ages. It's not all 5-year-olds. And we found there was less conflict when there was a mixture of ages and a mixture of abilities. Children with more advanced language skills, more advanced social skills would actually help children that would struggle in those areas versus segregating all those children away from each other. So I think keeping in mind those ideas for parents, inviting kids over for the day, a mixture of children actually helps with inspiration for play as well. So maybe not just a 1-hour play date, but having them over for the entire entire day or a couple hours, and you'll find that they really inspire each other, and you won't be needed so much, which is a good break for adults as well.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to happen in a structured program or a certain area.
Oh,
It can be
yeah.
done right in your own backyard, right?
Yes,
With
absolutely.
a variety of ages of children from your neighborhood.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. And for more information, you can visit the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute website as well as the Timbernook website. Thanks so much.